You ever notice how some people seem to be on this upward trajectory with money? Like, not in a flashy way, but in this quiet, steady way where they're just building something. Well, you're sitting there wondering why your bank account looks basically the same as it did 3 years ago. And it's not even that you're not trying, you're working hard, you're hustling, you're following the advice, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do. But somewhere between the intentions and the actual results, something's getting lost. And here's the thing that really gets me. The thing I've spent an embarrassing amount of time thinking about. It's usually not about what you're not doing. Like, the problem isn't that you need to add 17 more productivity hacks to your morning routine or discover some secret investment strategy that only billionaires know about. My name is Oliver, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, human behavior, and why some people seem to glide toward financial freedom while others feel like they're constantly swimming upstream. And what I've realized is this: most people who stay broke aren't broke because they don't know what to do. They're broke because they keep doing things that actively sabotage their own progress. And I know that sounds harsh, but stay with me here because this isn't about blame or shame or making anyone feel bad about their choices. This is about recognizing patterns. Because once you see them, once you really understand the subtle ways we torpedo our own financial futures, everything starts to shift. You start making different decisions, you start building different habits, you start creating the kind of momentum that actually leads somewhere. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to walk you through 7 things, 7 specific behaviors, patterns, mindsets, whatever you want to call them, that are probably keeping you from building real wealth. And I'm not talking about get rich quick stuff or just stop buying coffee nonsense. I'm talking about deeper patterns, the kind of things that feel normal, that feel like you're doing the right thing, but are actually quietly draining your potential to build a 7-figure net worth. Because here's the truth. Getting to $1 million isn't some mystical, unattainable thing reserved for people who went to fancy schools or had a rich parents or got lucky with cryptocurrency. It's actually pretty straightforward. But straightforward doesn't mean easy, and it definitely doesn't mean comfortable. And that gap between straightforward and comfortable, that's where these 7 things live.
Let's start with the obvious one. Except it's not actually obvious at all, because if it were obvious, everyone would stop doing it. You know what the actual wealthy people I know drive? Like the people with real money, the ones who've built businesses, who own multiple properties, who could retire tomorrow if they wanted to. They drive Toyotas. They wear normal clothes. They live in nice houses, sure, but not the biggest house on the block. They're not trying to impress anyone, and that's the entire point. Meanwhile, there are people making $60,000 a year driving leased BMWs, wearing designer everything, living in apartments they can barely afford because they're in the right neighborhood. And look, I get it. I really do. There's this incredible pressure to signal success, to show people you've made it, to prove to your high school classmates on Instagram that you're doing fine, better than fine, actually. But here's what's actually happening when you prioritize looking rich over being rich. You're literally choosing the appearance of wealth over actual wealth. Every dollar you spend on impressing people is a dollar that could be working for you, building your actual net worth, creating real financial security. It's like, imagine if instead of planting seeds, you just bought really nice pictures of trees. That's what lifestyle inflation does. And the crazy thing is, the people you're trying to impress, they're not impressed. They're either playing the same game and secretly broke too, or they're actually wealthy and can see right through it. The truly wealthy aren't looking at your car or your watch thinking, wow, that person has really made it. They're thinking that person is going to be stuck in the rat race forever. I had this friend, we'll call him Marcus, who got a pretty substantial raise at his job, like a $20,000 bump. And within 6 months, you know what happened? His lifestyle had completely expanded to match it. New apartment, new car payment, nicer restaurants, designer gym clothes. And when I asked him how much he was saving from the raise, he looked at me like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics. The answer was zero. Somehow, making $20,000 more per year resulted in exactly $0 of additional savings. That's the trap. Every time your income increases, if your expenses increase proportionally, you're running on a treadmill. You're working harder, earning more, and ending up in the exact same financial position. The pathway to $1 million isn't about earning more, though that helps. It's about creating a gap between what you earn and what you spend, and then investing that gap consistently over time. So here's what you do instead. Next time you get a raise, promotion, bonus, whatever, pretend it didn't happen. Literally, just keep living on your current income and automatically divert the increase straight into investments. You won't miss what you never started spending. And 5 years from now, when that money has been growing, when it's started compounding, when it's actually built into something substantial, that's when you'll understand the difference between looking rich and being rich.
There's this thing that happens with money decisions, and it's so subtle that most people don't even realize they're doing it. It's this constant waiting for the right time to start investing, waiting until you have more saved up, waiting until you've paid off all your debt, waiting until you fully understand the stock market, waiting until the economy's better. Waiting. And intellectually, this makes sense, right? Like you want to be smart about your money. You want to make informed decisions. You don't want to jump into something before you're ready. But here's the problem. That perfect moment never actually comes. There's always another reason to wait. The market's too high, or it's too volatile, or there's uncertainty in the economy, or you're not quite sure if this is the right fund, or maybe you should wait until next month when you'll have a bit more clarity. Meanwhile, years pass, literally years, and the compound interest you could have been earning, gone. The growth you could have captured, missed. The wealth you could have been building, still hypothetical. I think about this a lot, honestly, because I've talked to just so many people who say things like, I wish I'd started investing 10 years ago, or I should have bought property back in 2012, or whatever. And yes, obviously hindsight is 2020, but the real tragedy isn't that they didn't do it back then. The tragedy is that 10 years from now, they're going to say the exact same thing about today. They're going to wish they'd started now. And the cycle just continues. There's this concept in psychology called analysis paralysis, where you get so caught up in analyzing all the options, all the scenarios, all the what ifs, that you end up doing nothing. And with money, nothing is actually the worst decision, because doing nothing means your money is sitting there, slowly losing value to inflation, not growing, not working for you, just existing. The people who get to $1 million, they're not the ones who waited for perfect conditions. They're the ones who started with whatever they had, wherever they were, and just kept going. They opened a retirement account even when they could only contribute $50 a month. They bought their first property even though the market seemed expensive at the time. They started a side business even though they didn't have all the answers figured out. And yeah, they made mistakes along the way. They invested in some things that didn't pan out. They experienced market downturns. They faced setbacks. But you know what they weren't doing? Sitting on the sidelines waiting for someone to guarantee them that everything would work out perfectly. So if you're waiting to invest until you have $10,000 saved up, stop. Start with $100. If you're waiting to start a business until you have the perfect idea, stop. Start with a mediocre idea and improve it as you go. If you're waiting to buy property until prices come down, stop, because you have no idea if they will. And even if they do, you have no idea when. Time in the market beats timing the market. It's not about perfect decisions, it's about consistent action over long periods of time. This one's interesting because it's so deeply ingrained in how most people think about money that they don't even question it. You get a job, you have a salary, and that number becomes your identity. It becomes the limit of what you think you can earn. You're a $75,000 a year person or a $120,000 a year person or whatever. And look, having a stable job is great. I'm not anti-job. But if your only plan for increasing your income is waiting for annual raises and promotions, you're playing a very slow game with a pretty low ceiling. Because even if you're good at what you do, even if you get promoted regularly, there's only so high you can climb in most corporate structures. And the raises, they're usually just barely keeping pace with inflation.
The people who build serious wealth, and I mean the kind of wealth that actually gives you freedom and options, they don't rely on one income stream. They're not putting all their financial eggs in the hopefully my employer values me basket. They're creating multiple sources of income. They're building side businesses. They're investing in assets that generate passive income. They're treating their salary as the foundation, not the ceiling. And I know what you're thinking, but Oliver, I barely have time for the job I already have. How am I supposed to start a side business? And that's fair. Time is real. Fatigue is real. But here's the thing. You don't need to launch the next billion-dollar startup. You just need to create one additional income stream. Maybe it's freelancing a few hours a week. Maybe it's creating and selling digital products. Maybe it's rental income from a property. Maybe it's dividend income from investments. I know someone. Actually, you know what? Let me tell you about Sarah because her story is basically the blueprint for this. Sarah worked in marketing, made about $85,000 a year, which is solid, but not exactly I'm going to be a millionaire from this salary, money. And she could have just stayed there, gotten her 3% annual raises, been comfortable. But instead, she started freelancing on weekends, just helping small businesses with their social media, nothing glamorous. First year, she made an extra $8,000. Second year, $15,000. Third year, she had so many clients that she actually turned her freelance thing into a real business, hired a couple of people, and within 5 years, that side thing was making more than her salary ever did. And the whole time, she kept investing both streams of income. Her salary paid for her life. Her business income built her wealth. That's the pattern. Your salary maintains your lifestyle. Everything else builds your net worth. And here's the beautiful part about multiple income streams. They protect you. If you lose your job, you're not completely screwed. If one source dries up, you have others. You're not dependent on one company's success, one boss's opinion of you, one industry's stability. You're diversified, not just in your investments, but in your income. So stop thinking of your salary as the ceiling. Start thinking of it as the floor, the foundation, the baseline. And then ask yourself, what else could I build on top of this? Credit cards are basically financial weapons, and most people are pointing them at their own feet. And I don't mean this in the credit cards are evil way that some personal finance people preach. Credit cards are fine. They're actually useful tools if you use them correctly. The problem is most people don't use them correctly. Here's the rule that will change your financial life. Never, and I mean never, finance anything that goes down in value. Cars, furniture, electronics, vacations, clothes, whatever. If it's going to be worth less a year from now than it is today, you should only buy it if you can pay cash for it up front. Because here's what happens when you finance depreciating assets. You're paying interest on something that's actively losing value. It's like imagine if you borrowed money to buy ice cream and you had to pay interest on that loan while the ice cream melted. That's what buying a car on a high-interest loan is. You're paying for something that's decreasing in value every single day, and you're paying extra for the privilege of doing it over time. The math on this is devastating. Let's say you buy a $40,000 car with a 7% interest rate over 6 years. By the time you're done paying for it, you've paid about $48,000 total. But the car is now worth maybe $20,000 if you're lucky. You've lost $28,000, almost $30,000, just gone, evaporated. And for what? Transportation that you could have gotten much cheaper? Now compare that to someone who buys a $15,000 used car in cash. Same reliable transportation, but they took that $25,000 difference and invested it. After 6 years with average market returns, that $25,000 is now worth about $35,000. So same transportation, except one person is $28,000 poorer and the other person is $35,000 richer. That's a $63,000 swing just from one decision. And this applies to everything. That $3,000 couch you're financing over 2 years, you're paying interest to own a couch. The $1,500 iPhone on a payment plan, you're paying extra for a phone that'll be obsolete in 3 years. The vacation you put on a credit card that you'll be paying off for the next year, You're paying interest for memories, which, I mean, sounds poetic until you realize how stupid it is financially. The wealthy don't finance depreciating assets. They buy them cash or they don't buy them at all. And if they can't afford to pay cash, they wait until they can or they buy a cheaper version because they understand that every dollar spent on interest for things that lose value is a dollar that can't be building actual wealth. So here's the simple rule. If it makes you money or holds its value, like real estate, a business, education that increases your earning potential, sure, taking on smart debt can make sense. But if it's something that's going to be worth less tomorrow than it is today, pay cash or don't buy it. Future you will thank you. This one's going to sound harsh, and honestly, it is harsh, but it's also true, and pretending it's not true doesn't help anyone. Your environment shapes your behavior more than you think. The people you spend the most time with influence your decisions, your habits, your mindset, your financial choices. If everyone in your social circle is broke, spending money they don't have, living paycheck to paycheck, and treating financial responsibility like it's optional, guess what? You're probably going to end up doing the same things. Not because you're weak-willed or easily influenced, but because that's just how humans work. We adopt to our environment. We mirror the behavior of our peer group. If everyone around you thinks saving money is for losers and investing is too complicated and entrepreneurship is too risky, you're going to internalize those beliefs, even if you don't want to, even if you intellectually know they're wrong. And this doesn't mean you have to dump all your friends and become some kind of cold, calculating, wealth-building machine, but it does mean you need to be intentional about who you're learning from and who you're spending your time with. Because if all your friends want to do is go out to expensive dinners, take expensive trips, buy expensive things, and basically compete for who can look the most successful while being the most broke, that's going to pull you down. I've seen this so many times. Someone's trying to get their financial life together, they're trying to save, they're trying to invest, they're making progress, and then their friends are like, come on, let's go to Vegas, or let's all go in on this bottle service, or let's upgrade to the expensive restaurant. And there's this pressure, this social pressure to keep up, to not be the cheap one, to not be the boring one who cares about money. But here's what wealthy people understand. The real boring ones are the people who stay broke their entire lives because they were too worried about what their broke friends thought of them. You need at least a few people in your life who are ahead of you financially, people who have already done what you're trying to do, people who understand compound interest and real estate and business and investing, people who won't pressure you to spend money you don't have, people who will actually respect your financial goals instead of making fun of them. And if you don't have those people in your life, find them. Join communities, online or in person, where people are talking about building wealth. Read books by people who have done it. Listen to podcasts. Immerse yourself in that world. Because you can't become what you can't see. If everyone around you is broke, being broke feels normal. If everyone around you is building wealth feels normal. This doesn't mean abandoning your friends, but it might mean having boundaries. It might mean saying no to expensive outings. It might mean spending less time with people who drain your finances and more time with people who elevate your financial thinking. And if people can't respect that, if they make you feel bad for trying to build a better financial future, then honestly, they're not the friends you think they are. All right, so you've heard you should invest. You've got your 401k or your Roth IRA or whatever. You're putting in your $100 a month, maybe $200 if you're feeling ambitious. And that's great. Seriously, that's way better than nothing. But if that's your entire investment strategy, if that's the extent of your wealth building plan, you're not going to hit $1 million, or at least you're not going to hit it until you're like 65. Because here's the thing about small, conservative investments. They're safe, they're steady, they compound over time, and over a really long time, they build into something meaningful. But they're slow, really slow. And while you're waiting for your index funds to slowly grow, you're missing opportunities for larger returns. I'm not saying you should gamble your life savings on cryptocurrency or day trade or put all your money in some sketchy startup, but I am saying that if you want to build substantial wealth in a reasonable time frame, you need to take calculated risks. You need to invest in things that have the potential for higher returns. Real estate, businesses, higher growth investments, things that might make you uncomfortable at first. The problem is, most people are so scared of losing money that they never give themselves the chance to make serious money. They're so focused on not losing that they forget about the opportunity cost of playing it too safe. Like, yeah, keeping all your money in a savings account means you won't lose it to a bad investment, but you're definitely losing it to inflation. You're guaranteed to get poorer in real terms. Wealthy people understand that risk and return are correlated. Not every risk pays off. Some don't, and that's fine. But if you're not taking any risks, you're guaranteeing mediocre returns. You're choosing slow, steady growth over the possibility of accelerated growth. And look, I'm not saying be reckless. I'm saying be strategic. Educate yourself, understand what you're investing in, but then actually do it. Buy that rental property, even though it's a little bit scary. Invest in that friend's business if you believe in it. Put money into higher growth stocks or funds, even if they're more volatile. Build a side business, even though there's no guarantee it'll work. Because here's the reality. The gap between where you are financially and where you want to be is too big to cross with safe, small steps alone. You need some bigger moves. You need some risks that actually pay off. And yes, some won't. You'll make mistakes. You'll lose money on some things. But the ones that work, those are what build real wealth. Stop thinking of investing as just putting money into retirement accounts. Think of it as deploying capital to create more capital. Every dollar you have as a soldier in your wealth-building army, are you sending them on missions where they might actually accomplish something significant? Or are you keeping them in the barracks where they're safe but useless? And here's the big one, the one that underlies all the others, the one that's really keeping you from getting to $1 million. Excuses. I don't make enough money to invest. I have student loans. The economy is bad right now. I didn't grow up with money. I don't understand investing. I'll start next year. It's too late for me. Every single one of those excuses, I've heard it from someone who's now wealthy, who said the exact same thing before they decided to stop saying it and start doing something instead. Because here's the truth that no one wants to hear. Excuses are comfortable. They let you off the hook. They give you permission to stay exactly where you are. They protect your ego by putting the responsibility somewhere else, on the economy, on your past, on your circumstances, on anything except your choices. But the uncomfortable truth is that your financial situation is primarily a result of your financial decisions. Not entirely, of course, external factors matter, but primarily. And as long as you're focused on all the reasons why you can't build wealth, you're not focusing on all the ways you could. I know people who started with nothing, literally nothing, and built seven-figure net worths. I know people who had massive debt and turned it around. I know people who started investing in their 40s and still built substantial wealth. I know people who grew up poor and broke the cycle. I know people who failed multiple times before something worked. And you know what all of them have in common? At some point, they stopped making excuses and started making moves. They stopped explaining why it was hard and started figuring out how to do it anyway. They stopped waiting for perfect conditions and started working with what they had. Because ultimately, building wealth is not about having advantages. It's about making decisions. It's about consistently choosing the thing that builds your future over the thing that feels good right now. It's about recognizing that every dollar you spend is a choice between current pleasure and future freedom. And yeah, it's hard. It requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires delayed gratification. It requires doing things that your broke friends think are weird. It requires learning things that feel overwhelming at first. It requires taking risks that scare you. It requires working when you're tired. It requires saying no to things you want. It requires patience on a scale that feels unreasonable. But you know what else is hard? Being broke. Being stressed about money constantly. Being one emergency away from financial disaster. Being stuck in a job you hate because you can't afford to leave. Being 60 years old and realizing you have no retirement savings. That's hard too. Actually, that's harder. So pick your hard, the heart of discipline or the heart of regret. Because one way or another, you're going to face difficulty. you might as well make it the kind that leads somewhere. So here we are, 7 things to stop doing if you want to build real wealth. And I know, some of this probably sounds harsh. Some of it probably made you uncomfortable. Maybe you recognized yourself in some of these patterns and you didn't love it. That's okay. That's actually good, because discomfort is usually where growth starts. The thing about building wealth is that it's not complicated. Like, the actual mechanics of it are pretty straightforward. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, do it consistently for a long time, take some calculated risks, don't do stupid things with your money. That's basically it. But simple doesn't mean easy, because all of this requires fighting against your natural impulses, against social pressure, against instant gratification, against fear, against the comfort of excuses and the safety of staying where you are. And here's what I want you to understand. You're not going to do all of this perfectly. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have moments where you slip back into old patterns. You're going to buy something you shouldn't buy, or wait when you should act, or make an excuse when you should make a move. That's fine. That's being human. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. The goal is being a little bit better with money this year than you were last year, making slightly smarter decisions, building slightly better habits, creating slightly more income, investing slightly more consistently. Because wealth isn't built in dramatic moments. It's built in the mundane, boring, repetitive decisions you make every single day. The decision to pack lunch instead of eating out. The decision to invest instead of spending. The decision to work on your side business instead of watching Netflix. The decision to learn about investing instead of scrolling social media. Those tiny decisions compound. Over years, they become massive differences. Think about who you want to be 10 years from now. Think about the life you want to have, the freedom you want to experience, the options you want to possess. And then ask yourself, are the decisions I'm making today leading me toward that person or away from them? Because 10 years is going to pass whether you build wealth or not. You're going to be 10 years older. The question is whether you're also going to be significantly wealthier, or whether you're going to look back and wish you'd started today. You can do this. You actually can. It's not reserved for people smarter than you, or luckier than you, or more connected than you. It's available to anyone willing to stop doing the things that keep them broke and start doing the things that build wealth. Anyone willing to be uncomfortable for a while in exchange for freedom later. Anyone willing to choose their future over their present. So stop looking rich and start being rich. Stop waiting and start acting. Stop limiting yourself and start expanding. Stop financing depreciating assets and start building appreciating ones. Stop surrounding yourself with broke thinking and start immersing yourself in wealth-building mindsets. Stop playing it safe and start taking calculated risks. And most importantly, stop making excuses and start making progress. Your future self is counting on you. Don't let them down.